Hi, my name is Kaylin, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Visionary Boss Podcast, your intentional guide to living, working, and traveling well. The Visionary Boss philosophy is that being a boss starts with governing thyself, mind, and psyche. This is a podcast space for anyone who is seeking an improved quality of life, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're aspiring to have your own business, or you simply want to live more intentionally. I'm here today with Kat Stylez, author of Girl Who Hurt You. Kat, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm super excited to dive into my debut book and just to really have a fun conversation with you.
Yes, we're going to talk about your artistry, the creative process behind developing Girl Who Hurt You. Okay, so Girl Who Hurt You, give us a little bit more insight about your book for anyone who hasn't read it yet.
Yes, so in 2017, I self published my debut book, Girl Who Hurt You, and I describe it as a coming of age story told through poetry, and it explores the themes of self love, womanhood, breaking generational curses. But I started writing this when I was 17 during my last semester of senior year, and I was able to put this out when I was 19. So a lot of angst, youth angst in this book, but something I'm very proud of. And here I am in my mid 20s, just really continuing uh, the lifeline of Girl Who Hurt You and releasing other mediums.
Okay, what has been the most rewarding part about self publishing, especially at a young age, 19 years old?
I would say the most rewarding part is the ownership and having full agency over my creations. At the time when I wrote this book, I didn't really have a lot of outside noise. I was just super excited to transcribe my inner thoughts and epiphanies onto paper. So I'm really glad that there wasn't any outside noise or any outside influences to disrupt that really authentic creative flow. And just having ownership over my work and just knowing that I'm in control of the destiny for the book and even beyond this, any other forms of artistry, I'm really happy to have that ownership.
Okay, that's awesome. I feel like for a lot of independent artists, whether it is music or different media forms, it's so rewarding and nice to have like full ownership because no one could take away your voice and you have
Yes.
that full creative control and capacity. And at any given time, you're able to change or amend things as you go along the way, and no one's telling you what's good or not. You're kind of the ruler of that.
Exactly. And there's a lot of refining that has to be done, but I'm just really glad that I trusted myself at the time I was writing the book. And I was just very excited, very bright eyed and bushy tailed, and there was no shame attached to it. And now, as I'm older and I read back certain passages, I'm like, ooh, I really put that in a book, but I'm really glad I didn't let like outside noises or like any shame or insecurity influence this because I know the book has had the power of resonating and connecting with many, and something like that is just invaluable.
It is. I think that's why I value print media because you can't make alterations to it unless you really want to reissue another version of your book, but it's an entire integrity where it's like that art form, the original art form that you had it.
And it took a snapshot of
Right.
everything I was going through at that time, all of the teen angst, all of like the heartstrings being pulled. And of course, now I've evolved, through certain things, but I'm really glad I have this glimpse of 2017 right here on wax.
Right here on wax. So I know you published the book in 2017. You were a sophomore in college, but give me a little bit more about like the background of Girl Who Hurt You, the process of it, going back to even middle school or high school as far as creative writing and branding.
Okay. Well, those are things that have always interested me. I've always have been fascinated with the process of rolling out media. And at the time during high school, I had a deep interest with J.Coles label Dreamville, and I was such a nerd. I was just really studying and like trying to figure out like how does this really go? Like how does someone, create a body of work and then from that like the promotion and rolling it out to general public and going on tours. So I really used that timeline and that landscape to help me with my book, with figuring out what's the appropriate way to roll out things, how should I go about releasing merch? How do I go about creating community? So that was definitely a great reference point. And Beyonce and J.Cole are two of my hugest inspirations, and just seeing how they release their work and how they get to the better business of connecting with their audience is very inspiring. And I've been able to take pieces of that with how I've introduce my book into the world and also have released merch and continue to have these conversations about breaking generational curses and self-love.
What are some albums and some like art and music that have inspired Girl Who Hurt You?
A lot. At this time, when I was doing the manuscript, I vividly remember listening to Alicia Keys. The one that has like the singles, "You Don't Know My Name" and "Diary." I feel like I should know the title of that album, but
You
anyway,
lose so many cool points right now,
I
Kat
know I
Stylez.
lost like 10 aura points. But that album, I really liked it because it's one of my favorite albums, and I feel like it really tells a story from start to finish. And that's something I really wanted with my book. I wanted something that made sense with the sequence,
Right.
with making sure there's a story told, it's easy to follow, and you have, the climax, the rising action, a lot of these different things are identifiable. So that album really helped me. As I was writing, I was able to listen to the album, and it was background noise, but I just really loved how I could feel like the transgressions of the story. Um, JID was also a huge
Right.
inspiration. That was his freshman album with Dreamville that came out right around the time I was doing the manuscript. So having these really fresh or nostalgic pieces to listen to, I think the thing that continued to repeat in the back of my head is I need this to flow and to weave into a story. And the biggest inspiration I would say is Lemonade by Beyonce. As you know, Kaylin
As I know.
knows that was a really huge driving piece and catalyst for the development of the book.
I think so. So much storytelling, very cinematic. Even before the visuals came out, it was like sonically cohesive. So I couldn't further your book. It was very cohesive in the writing.
But it really inspired the book because senior year, so to give some backstory about like the origins of Girl Who Hurt You, it was senior year of high school. We were both in the same creative writing class, and we had a poetry unit, and we were tasked with writing a spoken word. And at that time, I wasn't really familiar with spoken word. I had done haikus and other forms of poetry, but this was something that was a challenge. And I remember listening and watching old Def Jam poetry clips, especially the one with Kanye. I really, really liked his cameo, but finding inspiration and just really discovering like what is spoken word, how is it done. But then Lemonade came around, and I just felt like that pulled on my heartstrings. I felt that expressed and described everything that I felt at that time, at this tug of war with being 17 years old, about to turn 18, about to go to college. And I had found this contemporary piece that really touched my soul, and it really helped me get to the place of ideating what Girl
Right.
Who Hurt You is. So that is just the biggest inspiration, honestly.
Looking back to that time, that was 2016, being in high school when he created that art piece, I remember us listening to Bryson Tiller. I think that he could have inspired a little bit of your book, Girl Who Hurt You.
100%.
Yeah.
When I think back to that era, 2015 and a little bit before, I think we were just so blessed to have that time where there was true album rollouts happening.
Right.
And the A&Rs, they were clocked in. They were making sure things were nipped up tight and refined. But that was just such a timeless experience to witness so many new artists, especially hitting like the R&B and rap scene, and them really having polished rollouts and really cohesive, sonically pleasing albums. And I'm just really blessed that I was able to have those in my back pocket at the young, tender age of 17, because those were just really huge moving pieces that one I connected with from like a social standpoint, but from an artist standpoint, just wanting to see like the veil behind the production and how things are pieced together. It was really cool to follow those things.
And also, those were universal themes. With Girl Who Hurt You, you talk about love and relationships. So your audience is very vast. You have women and men of all ages and backgrounds, because when you talk about love and relationships and interpersonal relationships, you're able to relate to that somehow. So it's amazing to see at different pop-ups or events that you have for your book, people are buying your merch and your book, and you have guys looking through the rack of
Girl Who Hurt You shirts.
the rack of Girl Who Hurt You merch, and they're just immediately they're excited and they're curious about, what is this? Like, is this a brand? Is this a book? And then it all falls in together.
Yeah, I'm really honored to resonate with so many different age groups, different backgrounds, different creeds. And I always say the common thread in this all is that we all have experienced some heartache or some disappointment in some shape or fashion. So that being like the common thread with like the human condition, that's why we all can relate to Girl Who Hurt You. So don't let the title of the book steer you off. Give it a chance. It really is for you.
I know for guys, young guys, older guys, everyone can learn a little something.
A little something. And kind of to go back to your point about people flipping through the racks, I think the passion I had with designing the merch really stemmed from at that time when I released the book, I was working retail. I was an undergrad. I was also
Yeah,
working
so
retail.
give us a little of insight, paint a picture for us of when you, I would say the 6 months before you release the book till after, and how you're able to romanticize the process of writing your book and living your everyday life. So where were you? Where did you work? What were you doing in that point of your life?
Yes. So when I started the book, writing it, I was 17 years old. Like I said, I was in my poetry unit, my creative writing class. I did the spoken word. After I performed the spoken word, I realized this is something that I want to be married to. I want to continue getting better at this process. I want to continue evolving as an artist. So from there, during my freshman year of college, I just kept writing here and there. I would do open mics. We would go with our friends, probably like the youngest in the room. But I just had this strong pull and connection to continue writing and continue being better with performing.
I know as I remember going to the spoken word nights at Joffrey's in Ybor City.
Yes.
Tender age of 18 years old, never really
Never
experienced much in nightlife either. So it was just like a whirlwind of, okay, we're the bright lights in the city on a Saturday night supporting our friend with her book.
So I really enjoyed being in front of an audience, and the true seed of the book is this poem called Layers. And that was the spoken word that I performed when I was in high school. So Layers was the start of it all. After I wrote Layers and I performed it, it just was up from there. I just kept writing more and more. And the really cool thing about the process of writing the book, I knew eventually it would be shaped and completed as a full body of work. But I didn't have this pressure or this timeline. I just really wanted to live life, keep having experiences.
I wanted to mention that too, because a lot of times when people are expected to write a book, they do have a deadline and they're working with a publisher, working with a team of people. So it probably felt nice for you to just be a little bit more relaxed and creative, not having to be chained to, okay, you have 3 more months for this cut off.
100%. When I think of my favorite artists and I see like their creative process and them entering new eras, I see how meticulous it is.
Yes.
I see how detail oriented, and I want to mirror that. So when it came to writing the book, I'm balancing being an undergrad, I'm balancing, this new social life and friend groups, and more heartstrings being tugged a little bit. I'm also balancing working retail, and I was working at two of my favorite stores, Paxton and Forever 21, and just having that experience like on foot, like just really seeing how brands are built and how to market and like merch and visual merchandising. All those things I poured into Girl Who Hurt You. I was able to create a merch line just from my affinity with music, culture, fashion. So all these things are happening all at once, and I'm writing here and there. And then eventually, fall of 2017, I finally completed the book, and I remember ordering the draft copy. And I was so excited to see my name on it.
Do you still have it?
I still have it. Of course, I still have it. That is like a national treasure. I was so excited to finally have like the physical book in my hands. And of course, I had to go to my trusted advisors. Although 100% I knew this was like something I was so excited about and I was like set on it. I wanted others to review it just in case. So I had you read it. I had our mom read it. I had one of my best friends, Matt, shout out to Dragonfly. I had him read it just because I knew these are 3 people who truly like know my heart. And I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing a beat, that everything I was trying to transcribe was felt.
And going back to that first time reading it, I think I just fell in love immediately. I don't think that there was anything that I would change about it. I don't think that there was anything that you did change about it after writing it. It was just so good. And I can say that, and I know no bias because I'm your sister, but it was just so clever. It was witty. It was fresh. It was vibrant. And all I could think of were different visuals and different characters. And it was just really, it was in like an eargasm, but it was like it was an eyegasm, just like reading those words on that paper. And it felt so real having that copy. Yeah.
That was definitely like a very special moment. this might be too much, but I guess I could equate it to trying on your wedding dress, or like
That's
trying
okay.
to say yes to the dress. Seeing that book and physically touching it, I'm like, oh, it's game time. Like, it's only up from here. Like, people just have to catch up and get ready because we are on this journey.
So when you're writing something or creating art, you're doing it for yourself, but also there is an intended audience. So how did you feel other people reading your book? When I remember it was like the launch of your book release party. Everyone was there flipping it through the book for the first time. People are buying the book, leaving reviews the same night or the next day. How did that feel to have people just reading your book and absorbing all of that was in there, all the content?
It felt good because
Okay.
I knew the work was done. There was nothing that I was just so cringed out or like had the ick about. I'm like, I have to accept the fact.
Like, no, there's just this one chapter.
Like, just avoid that one. No, I just had to come to full terms. You know, there's no ego attached to it. There's an awareness. An audience will read this, but I knew it's so much more and so much more. It's beyond the people in this room at the release party, my friends, my coworkers, my family, my peers. This has the power of connecting and resonating with many. And because of that fact, I just have to let go of any type of fears. And I was writing the book, of course, you know, there's that awareness. Like, as any artist, any author, any medium you may have, there's an awareness that this will get into the hands or the ears, the eyes of other people. So, of course, you know, when I'm considering the audience, I'm not really considering the fact that I need to tell the story a certain way, make it a certain way for the audience and like anything that's vanity related. I'm just making sure, am I hitting the points? Can they follow this? Um, is there some type of connection they can have? But selfishly, when I was writing, it really was for me. This was like therapy. This was so exciting
And I think
to.
it should be like that because when you're fully transparent, you have no idea how it's going to touch other people. If you're so worried about coddling it and mending it to be like molding it to be like very commercial, you're missing the opportunity just to be real because so many people have walked up to you. Even like when we were, there's been times just out in Tampa, St. Pete, you know, just hanging out with some friends, and then someone's like, "Is that Kat Stylez?"
I'm like, it's
It's me. It's really me. And then people will gravitate towards you and tell you exactly what chapters have touched them, what they relate to. And people have like these full on stories. And that's why I feel like when you are creating something, of course, you have to be aware commercially how it's received and the audience and how people are going to take it. But the more real you are and the more you just like unfold all of those layers, that
yes.
pun intended layers,
Oh my gosh,
the
layers.
more you unveil everything, you're putting out something that's so pure and beautiful, and people can attach themselves to it.
I think the best compliment, one of the best compliments I've received with a book, I had a release party and it was a few weeks after. And someone I went to high school with, she told me, she was like, wow, when I was reading this, I felt like you were reading the pages of my diary. I felt like you were talking through and to me. And I was almost embarrassed because I felt like, how did she know?
Right.
And I was like, wow, the fact that you felt that through my words, I've gotten that a lot. Like, how did you know I was going through
They're
this?
healing words. That's why. Yeah. I remember when I first started The Visionary Boss, of course, my brand has evolved, but first starting it, there was a lot of pieces that were more vulnerable, like think pieces and diary entries. And, you know, I just kind of did it for myself. And people would DM me and message me about it, like later on, people who were older than me even, and express, like, wow, like you really touched me. I can relate to that. And you helped me heal through a really difficult time. So those are archival blog posts now on the blog, but it's special to touch people because you're being real. And I think people need
Yes.
more authenticity, especially in books, because of course your book, I mean, it was nonfiction, it was fiction.
Realistic
Yeah, it was
fiction.
realistic
Well,
fiction.
there's
Yeah.
so I guess to speak to the book, a lot of people want to know like who's the story about? Is it about you?
Who hurt
Is it
you?
a story about us?
Is it about us? Is
Is
it
it
about
about
me?
us?
It's
Who
not
wrote
you.
this
It's
play?
not you, it's I.
So yes, to answer the question, it is a mix of all of that. Some people want to be so nosy; they want to like go line by line. Like, can you confirm or
Like, is this a biography?
is this biography? Girl, who hurt you? So to back it up a bit, when I was writing it, up until that point, at my very young age of 17,
I know. What did you really experience by the age of 17?
I was not a scorned, woman or anything like that. So I'm just, hopping along. Whenever we're in creative writing class or just any type of writing class, I'm always writing about social constructs, pieces on what's happening in the media, what's happening in the world. Not really turning the pen back onto myself. I'm like, what? Why would I ever do that in high school? That's so embarrassing to tell your truth. But
oh, it is.
I
didn't get that memo.
I thought to myself, let me just change up a bit. There's something on my heart. My little heartstrings are pulled. Lemonade by Beyonce is inspiring me. I want to transform this into a poem, which obviously came into the book. So with the book, it's a mix of all the best of Kat. You have some of my moments, some things that I've dealt with, my little heartstrings pulled. But you also have my very young eyes, the lens of the social landscape, how relationships are, how social media is, how Twitter is at that time. All these things I'm reflecting on.
And you know what's really funny about that?
What?
I feel like now people, like the art of storytelling has been condensed to very short format videos. But back in 2016, 2017, the most you had were just like YouTube story times. Now you have like TikTok. So I feel like your book is a reflection of like the times of where it could fit in past and present.
The digital landscape.
Yeah.
But all that to say, it's about me for sure. I'm at the focal point, but it's also about you and the women you may hurt or the men you may hurt or how hurt people. So as interesting and fascinating as it is to imagine that every single thing is about me, it's also a mirror for yourself. And my mom, our mom, she's so funny. When I was writing this book, how to have momager read it, and that's someone my mom I'm very inspired by, and she's the type, she's like a compass, and when I look at her, I just know she can give the best advice, and I can trust and lean on her like, hey, is this good, or let me know if this is too left field. So before the book came out, when I was just performing spoken word, after a while she's like, hey, I need to tell you something. I'm like, hey, like, what's up? Yeah, you might want to change up the material that you're performing, because every single Saturday it's like very repetitive. It's like, who hurt this little girl? This girl is coming into these coffee shops, and it's like, who broke your heart this week?
Oh, girl, I remember that.
Girl, who hurt you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, no, I don't want to be perceived as that, but also that's hilarious, and that turned into the book. But it's just a little funny to think about how that comment really led us up to here.
Oh, it is. And I remember those nights in Ybor at Joffrey's. I remember the first time you performed, you were wearing this Tupac shirt, this oversized Tupac shirt, and you're going up to the stage and you're holding onto your phone. Everyone read off their notes.
Honestly, I think it may have been like a bunch of pages stapled together at that time.
And you're just looking down and you're reading. You're like, "Hi guys, my name is Kat Stylez.
My name's Kat Stylez. Go back to the paper."
I'm reading layers, and then you go into your just like scene. Everyone's watching. I think people were more like enamored than judging you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point, because I think a lot of times we always assume if people have like that deer in headlights look, that means they're judging. No, they could just be so mesmerized.
I think it was just shocking. That's all.
Very shocking.
It was a beautiful surprise, not a beautiful mistake.
Oh, that's cute.
So for people who, I feel like now again tides are changing. More people are releasing out work independently, whether it's music, or it's art, it's books. What advice do you have to give for people who are interested in releasing their own books, especially poetry books? That's very trendy and in these days.
Hey, stay in your lane. No, I'm kidding. There's other genres to claim. I'm just kidding. My biggest advice...
Or even self-help books for people who just want to write. It doesn't have to be really fiction, but just pieces that help and inspire.
People who want to create and release to the world. Well, no matter what the medium is, whether it's art, music, books, TV, mixtapes, knitting, whatever that medium may be, I would just say remain authentic and true to yourself. Remain true to your timeline.
Right.
I was very blessed at the time when I was writing. I didn't have all this outside noise. I just was so excited to like get to the better business of perfecting the craft. A lot of beautiful work is done in the shadows. Take your time.
Take your time.
Take your time.
It's not always a rat race.
When something is timeless and it's not fleeting, it's going to last forever. And I think that's the beauty. This is something that I created in 2017. here we are many years later, and I've experienced much more life. But I'm very proud of this body of art, this body of work, because I knew that it was timeless and it was coming from the heart, and it will stand the test of time. And yes, there may be things now I'm like, oof, did I really write that teen angst? But I have no regrets. And I just think, it really is about growing. You're going to continue growing and evolving. So your first piece you may release, you might have certain thoughts and regrets later, but I think there's beauty to just getting the work done and just knowing that there's more beyond that. And being an indie artist, I'm going to continue writing and hopefully, break out into the mainstream. But I think it's comforting to know that this is the first of many, but it's not the last. And I have the opportunity to refine and perfect and get better and mature. And I'm excited to release my next upcoming bodies of work because the self work has been done. The pen has been pressed on that paper. I've been typing away. I've been living life, and I'm excited to share that with you all.
I think that you really are a beautiful representation of someone who's built a brand. Again, these aren't fleeting projects. These are very intentional. There's a lot of heart and soul into it. You can really feel it when you read it. So that's why I love that the fact that you wrote it, so many years ago, but you're able to still promote it because it's still relevant and it's cohesive.
We all go through, like I said, heartache, some type of dissatisfaction, but it's comforting to know you're not alone in that.
Okay. So what advice or words of wisdom would you have to give for someone who is in a stage in their life where they're not happy or satisfied with how things are going, maybe not in the best relationship, not in the best relationship with themselves, they don't have a clean home, like figuratively? What advice do you have to give for them to go into that next chapter with hope, lightheartedness?
Yes, I would say you're never as low as you think. And even when you think you're at rock bottom, it's actually the perfect space to be because it really allows you to quiet all the outside noise and to have a more deeper introspective look into self. And you can really identify, why am I in this spot? What's triggering me or keeping me from progressing? And I think when you really take a deeper look into yourself, you're allowed to process that information, and there's so much power in the pivot. So you may be low, but it's only up from here. And I think it might be scary at first to process that information, to keep it real with yourself, but it'll be the most rewarding thing because it'll only propel you further.
Yeah, it's mind over matter. I think that when you really feast on positivity, you can get yourself out of any difficult time.
Absolutely.
Having mental strength is so beautiful and it's priceless. No one can really buy that. It's a muscle that you have to continue working.
Exercising, 100%. Yeah.
Well, Kat, let me see your book really quick. You can find Girl Who Hurt You on Amazon, or you can visit girlwhohurtyou.com. And where can they find you, Kat, on socials?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Style by Kat. Thank you so much for having me today.